So my name, again, I'm Jonathan Watts Hall. I'm the Director for Student Success here at the System Office. I've been pleased to be sort of seeing the progress of this summit throughout the week, and we've come to a day where we're really focusing on how we sort of bind some of this work together. So today, we're joined by a really pretty great, exciting panel on how we build and maintain communities on our campuses. You know, it's been it's a really important aspect of some of the work that is embedded in the momentum work, that we create a space where students belong, and campuses do that in all kinds of different ways, and our institutions have taken novel ways to make sure that our students have a place. This ties back to some of the stuff we heard from the Student Voices session earlier in the week. It really links really closely into how we stay connected with our students, that we want to make sure that we have schools where students feel like that somebody knows them and that they belong. That they have a place here. And this became even more critical when in March our students were sent home because of the pandemic. That being sticky to the schools became a really, really challenging problem to solve. And so I'm really sort of this challenge is really at the heart of what makes some of this momentum work really work for our campuses and work for our students. The degree to which your momentum approach ties into this idea that the students have a place where they belong and where this is their identity. So today we're going to have a few different kinds of discussions around this, but they're all going to center around that same idea of making sure that students have across the institution and deep in the institution a place to be. You know, today we're joined by Kimberly Andrews and Jesse Kane. Kimberly is the Dean of the University College, and Jesse is the Vice President for Student Affairs and Enrollment Management at Fort Valley State University. They're going to be followed up by Jerry Oliver. He's the Director for African American Male Initiative at Augusta University. We're going to hear then from two campuses talking about learning communities. We have Michael Sanservino, who's the Interim Vice President for Student Engagement and the Dean of Students, and Eric Cuevas, who's a Senior Director for Student Success Programs at Georgia State. And then wrapping up the session today, we've got Rachel Bowser, who's the Associate Provost for Strategic Initiatives, Karen Jackson, Associate Dean for Advising Programs, Justin Jernigan, Senior Associate Vice President for Dean of Student Success, all from Georgia Gwinnett College. We'll talk about some of their work. Like I said, we're going to start off with Kimberly and Jesse, and if y'all are ready to go, I am ready to cede the floor to y'all and look forward to hearing what you have to say.
Thank you. Thank you so very much. Give me just a moment. Let us get our presentation up. And so I want to say good afternoon to everyone. Thank you for joining us. We are going to talk, Dr. Kane and I, who are going to talk just a little bit about building and maintaining our communities and how we leverage technology to monitor and track our engagement.
Yeah, and I would like to say good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Dr. Andrews, for the introduction. And I think this will be an alignment conversation with us, particularly relative to some of the things that Jonathan mentioned in his opening comments about how we are engaging students, particularly some of the challenges that we have to overcome in this new space relative to the pandemic. And so one way at Fort Valley State University, where we are collaborating across units, and so academic affairs with University College and student affairs, but also utilizing technology that we had in place but was able to enhance to create an online community, so to speak, of how our students are engaging in this new space on campus. And so the overview is listed there. One, collaborative relationships between academic and student affairs. Two, to talk about this online tool that we utilize here that's Presence, which is our online student platform, engagement platform, and then how we are utilizing some data to really drive community building.
And so one of the things that I can say being here that I find really unique and wonderful is the partnership that you see between academic affairs and student affairs, specifically with our university college. I know a lot of institutions do not necessarily have a university college, and so here the university college serves as the catalyst and the foundational introduction to Fort Valley State University as a whole for our first year, second year students, and then also our transfer students coming in for the first time. And so we're able to establish this amazing partnership with enrollment management, also with student affairs on the engagement side, to really help build this amazing student success community around our students as they enter the institution.
Yeah, and that's so important. And in fact, we just had a meeting early today where we were talking about those partnerships, because what we try to do is look at the seamless experiences for students, because students don't exist in silos, and or they don't understand that where one department ends and another begins. And so some of their experiences, we have to think really collaboratively and invite each other to play in our sandboxes about how we provide a seamless experience for them. And so one of the things that we do is that new student orientation, which has been traditionally something that we've done in student affairs, but understanding that first year experience, the first FESU 100 course, that is in university college. And so rather than this kind of take them to the point and hand them off to someone else, we worked on working collaboratively, across the division to see how we can create an experience where both units are involved in creating that experience. And so that's how we've managed new student orientation. We've also done that with LEAP as well, which is not the literacy education program that most people are familiar with LEAP. For us, it is leadership, engagement, achievement, and professionalism, which is one of our signature programs where we think about developmentally for students, how do we address these core competencies in students from the very beginning, as soon as they hit the campus. And so career services are involved with that, which is student affairs. Student and civic engagement is involved in that, and then residential learning communities. But although those are in student affairs, we partner with University College by giving students part of their requirements in University College. They're fulfilling those requirements in student affairs, but they're getting academic credit in University College.
Absolutely. And then we also have our FBSU 100 class. So this is the introduction to the university. This is where we really begin to connect the students, not only with the history of the institution, but also with the culture of the institution. And so it is very, very important for us, just as an HBCU, for our students to know and understand where they come from. So they're learning the history of the presidents. They're learning their buildings on campus, you know, and it's kind of one of the things that I love the most. Is we have a scavenger hunt that the students do at the beginning of the semester, where we're asking them to find key offices in academic affairs, student affairs, financial aid, enrollment management. So they're going into these offices, engaging with actual faculty and staff to be able to find the key people that they need to know on campus. And, you know, and from an administrator standpoint, it really gives you an opportunity when you're not in meetings to really be able to engage with students one-on-one, to engage them in conversation, and then also just to find out about them. We also use this to help our students work on some of their soft skills. So say, for example, a lot of our students may not know how to compose a professional email. They may know to say good morning. They may text sometimes the same, they email the same way that they text. So just working on making sure that we're assisting with developing some of the expectations that we have here at the institution as a culture. And then also introducing them to a lot of our policy and processes on campus, some of the key offices that they need to know, what it may need to look like to go through, for example, an academic appeal, how their processes and hierarchy are here at the institution.
Yeah. Dr. Andrews, I call it a good day whenever I get an email from students that start with good morning. Sometimes just hey, or just asking a question. But then, and student affairs, and one of the last things that we on this list that we wanted to talk about is these events that we call clause events, and those are cultivating leadership and wildcat service events, and that's really relative to what I mentioned with LEAP. And these special events that we have designated with a clause tag that will give students credit for attending these events for other things that they want to do. So if a student wanted to engage in, let's just say, Greek life opportunities, then they must have so many clause credits that they've attended some event that that we deem that not only did you attend to get something out of an activity to have fun, but this is a learning or educational opportunity that is outcome driven. And so those are the types of events that we have designated, and even in University College, they may be some of the activities or engagement through FESU 100, where those students are encouraged to attend certain events to get credit for back in their academic experience. And so we try to now create not just social opportunities for students to engage, but also to think about what opportunities are there to incorporate some learning outcomes in our programming so that students can get that academic credit for it on the FASU 100 side. The next thing that we want to go into is really talk about how we manage that, and that is what presence is. And some of your campus may utilize presence, but I think that this was important. We've always used presence on campus, but one of the things that we thought about across the campus is that how are we engaging students where we can't bring them all together, where we may not have as much face-to-face engagement as we used to with them, to make sure, one, what they're doing, how they're navigating through the campus, and if we value engagement as an important experience for students, how we are tracking that engagement. And so the next couple of slides is just looking at some of the analytics that we are using to really talk about how our students are engaging in these things that we're talking about in this new COVID space. And so if you go back to the other slide, Dr. Andrews, the previous one. And so the system is called Presence, is at the top, and the PRESENC. That is our student engagement platform. And so as you see here, you have this tab of analytics. And what this does is that it gives us an opportunity to know what students are doing relative to our activities on campus. So if you're involved in a club and organization, you're captured in presence. Or if you attend an event, because we utilize, you have to sign in, and that sign-in information, presence talk to banner. So we begin to know a bit more information than just who attends our event. You can look at right here what we have here, the number of organizations that are built in there, the number of members of organizations, the events, the monthly unique attendees to our events, and then even the forms used that when students request specific information from us, how many of those forms are we getting in of student requests? The next slide is by month, or by event between this period. So we see a start date of January the 11th through March 2nd. So we can go through here and figure out what has been the attendance of each event. And these are screenshots, but if you hover over the bar, it will tell you what event that is. And so we get to know what students are attending, what is very popular for students. This outlier here, this on February the 2nd, this bar that's almost off the graph was a Greek life related event. So those Greek life events are always very, very popular. And so we get to see what students, what they're interested in, and how we are tracking that across different events. We also get to tell how many duplicates we see. So how many students who attended the event on 1 week or 1 day attended the next event. So we get to see how many duplicates are we having across event those students really are engaging. And so here, this is another way where we track it, where we're new and returning students, how many of our the events or attendees that we're having for new students versus our returning students, how many are members versus non-members, as well as the departments that we see here. So if you are a member of a Greek letter organization or non-Greek, if you're a recognized student organization, if it's a departmental organization, any of those types of things relative to organizations, we get to see who attends them. Across the top, again, more information on how many active organizations that we're having that are sponsoring events, how many attended on average the events, the number of total attendees, and things like that. This is by a breakdown of classification, how many of all the students who are attending the events are seniors, juniors, and so on. So this is gives us a bit more information. As you can see, is a bit equally distributed as far as who's attending the our events, but we get to see a bit of this information. The next slide shows by demographic, by major, and this is the important thing of really having presence speak with banner, because students don't give us this information, we're just able to extract it. So by major, how many students are attending events and what event that they're attending. And so as you can see, biology overwhelmingly occupying the majors of those who are actually attending events. And so this just gives us good information. So around programming, around planning, around sharing information, we can now begin to target specific groups where we may see overrepresentation or underrepresentation, depending on what events there are and then who in those particular majors are attending. The next slide is by gender, by male and female who's attending. So here we see overwhelmingly more women are attending events than our men students. And so what might we do to begin to target specific populations a bit more so that we can see these numbers driven in the direction that we want to see them go. And then lastly, as far as presence, is that we get to track it by residence hall as well. And so all of our residence halls are built into there. So as students sign into events, as students attend events, we see where students are living. And so that are there opportunities for us to do, again, more targeted outreach to specific buildings that may be underrepresented in our numbers so that we can encourage them to attend more events. The point is that in this space, we don't want students to feel isolated. We don't want students to feel disconnected from what their experiences are. So building these online communities of students where students get to build a profile and presence, they can go in and check their own activity relative to any events that they attend, and it gives them a breakdown of this is what you attended during this given period, and all of those things that they can now begin to see, particularly as it relates to us building co-curricular transcripts and experiential types of learning experiences so students can see for themselves what they are engaging in while they're on campus.
And so I think that's even what one of the biggest things is for us, is because everything is about making sure that our students are engaged, that they're adapting to the culture of the institution, that they are beginning to build relationships, not just socially, as VP Kane mentioned, but also academically. So when we're finding that they have those commonalities in majors, or we're finding out that they have the commonalities because they're in the residence halls, being able to capitalize on those things. So that is, again, just driving towards what our ultimate goal is, not just their retention, but their persistence, and then ultimately their graduation.
Absolutely.
Thank you. That's my favorite slide.
Well, thank you for that as well. And are there, I guess, at this point, see if we can go over, there any questions we have in the chat? I don't see any questions in the chat. You did note what that was presence, and you've been pleased with it. How long have y'all been using presence?
We've been using presence now for maybe a year and a half. We were using OrgSync, and then they changed their pricing structure and their service agreement. So we went away from OrgSync and we found presence, and we are pleased with it. And we are learning more about how we can continue to use it in a very robust way. So we're excited about what this is doing for us, and particularly the data that is allowing us to collect on our students, because there is a connection with Banner with presence.
Yeah, and one thing Jesse and I talked about earlier is the fact that the first year of data that is really being gathered with presence is pandemic data.
Yeah.
And so everything that you're seeing is how students have engaged during the pandemic. And so that's what's serving as our baseline. So it's going to be really interesting for us to be able to see what it looks like once we get back to our new normal. So that's going to be very, very exciting.
Yeah, no, it's an interesting year to experiment with this, and I am actually really curious where this goes. So, are there features that Presence does not have that you wished it did have? That's a question coming in from George Gwinnett.
Yes, what we found is that in OrgSync, we were engaging in really the development of a student-driven co-curricular transcripts that can be generated out of OrgSync. Presence doesn't give us that functionality, so we have to kind of collect it and we'll have to print it out on behalf of the student. So it doesn't really have that co-curricular transcript functionality that we were hoping that it had, but outside of that, I think it gives us a lot of other things that we found beneficial in helping us to manage and monitor how students are navigating through different events throughout campus.
And so, and one final question coming from Middle Georgia State, what percentage of your students are utilizing the system, creating a profile, monitoring their engagement in comparison to their peers, such?
Well, we automatically load all of our students into Presence. And so that during the community, particularly for the communication piece, because we use this as our communication platform primarily for students. And so we're able to communicate with all students. We are seeing about 30% of the students now who are actually going in and actively building profiles in Presence to engage with the system in that way. So there are constant campaigns to encouraging students to sign up in Presence, to get more information, to learn what's happening, to really to use that as their online community amongst one another. We utilize this also for allowing clubs and organizations to use Presence as a platform to hold their organizational meetings. And so if you go into Presence, you can build up, connect to Zoom and have a meeting through this platform. So we really wanted to make this almost like their online virtual or meeting space where they can connect with each other, just to create some sense of normalcy, since we have to restrict gatherings face to face and things like that. So they have this mechanism to be able to continue some of those activities.
Fantastic. Well, thank you both so much. I really appreciate it. That's great. I want to hand it over now to Jerry Oliver from Augusta State, or not Augusta State, sorry, Augusta University. I'm trying to do too many things at once.
Good afternoon, everyone. So, as Jonathan mentioned earlier, my name is Jerry Oliver, and I'm the Student Success and Learning Skills Coordinator here at Augusta University, and I also serve as the Program Director for the African American Male Initiative Program at Augusta University. And I want to go ahead and apologize about my camera. It's not been working, and so I have a ticket in with IT, working with technology. This is what happens. So today I kind of want to talk to you guys about how we have built and maintained community through the lens of the African American Male Initiative Program at Augusta University, and how it kind of falls into the overall community at Augusta University. But first, I wanted to kind of define and give a framework for what community is and what it means. So we use the principles by Ernest Boyer, who is the former president for the Carnegie Foundation of Advancement of Teaching. He listed 6 principles for community that was really essential for how we designed several of our learning communities on our campus. He stated that those programs should be educationally purposeful. And so those programs should be a place where faculty and students that have common academic goals, and those things strengthen the teaching and learning and things on campus. And so you can start seeing from some of these definitions how these things really link in with the momentum approach that we're talking about during this summit. They should be open, so a place where free speech was protected, and also civility is powerfully affirmed. It's a place where each person is being honored with the diversity, and we're appreciating it. So the whole thing with inclusive excellence that we've been talking about for several of the momentum sessions that we've had. It's also discipline. So it's a place where individuals accept, and they also deal with the obligations of the organization structure, and the governance of the organization structure kind of provides the structure for the behavior that everyone in the community is going to kind of follow. It's also a place that's caring. It's a place where we in the community all care about each other. We care about our students. And so this is one of the things that is really big with all of our learning communities and all of the things that we do here at the different support areas at the university. But it's also a place where we celebrate the achievements of the people in the community. So the communities oftentimes have traditions and rituals and things. Those are things that really make up different communities. Communities also influences the members to kind of look beyond themselves and feel a sense of responsibility and commitment for valuing others within that community. But we can't really talk about communities without talking about sub-communities. And oftentimes we're talking about those sub-communities that we refer to as learning communities, which is what I'm going to be talking about for the AAMI program. So I use this definition from Aston to kind of define what the learning communities are. And so he characterized it as saying that it was a common sense of purpose that can be used to build a sense of group identity, cohesiveness, uniqueness, and it encourages continuity and the integration of diverse curricular and co-curricular experiences. And so that's when we start to talk about how we're integrating our high impact practices, some of those things that a lot of the schools like Georgia State and other places are doing with the block scheduling and having some of the curriculum things or whatever integrated into their programs. So the takeaway message from both Aston and Boyer's definitions for community is basically that we want to make sure that we examine different social movements and things so we can be aware of things that are going on that impact our students. We want to involve our students from the very beginning. Oftentimes when we're creating all of these programs, just because we have our PhDs and master's degrees and we studied these things, we're like, oh yeah, we can create this and our students are going to benefit from it, but we've never included students from it from the beginning of that process, and then the program doesn't work out. We don't set those clear expectations that link up to our institutional missions or the organizational missions that we have, and then we don't really stay aware of all of the barriers that come into threaten the community for student success. And so I provided here for you guys, and I'm going to put this in the chat later, a handout from EAB, a known partner that we have in the USG for many of our institutions. They have a handout with over 100 different barriers that can kind of threaten student success and communities. And so for our AAMI program at Augusta University, we really proactively try to combat the issues that fall up under the climate, which deals with the sense of belonging. And so earlier I mentioned being aware of the social movements and things that are going on outside of the actual university. There's been some big things that have been going on, especially when we talk about social justice. And with the program for our Black male students, we have to think about issues like number 36 on this handout, interactions with campus and local law enforcement. And so we have those conversations with our campus police officers, and we invite them in to talk to our students to facilitate conversations and to build that community early on. But wait, before any of you guys decide to go ahead and build a whole new community or anything on your campus, you got to ask yourself these questions. Number one, what's already been done and why are you developing this learning community? So many times we create these things and we find out someone else on campus is already doing the exact same thing. We haven't communicated it with anybody. And then we're reaching out to our students, and we have so many students who are just being pulled in so many different directions. They're being asked to attend, this learning community or this student organization, or so many different things, and we're adding different things that really just doesn't help our students because they're being involved in way too many things and they can't manage their time because they feel obligated to do it. We built these relationships with them, and we've told them that this organization or this learning community is really going to help them. And so they're like, oh yeah, I'm going to do this, and they sign up for it. You also want to talk about who should be sitting at the table for designing that learning community. And how does that learning community connect to the overall campus community and the other institutional goals, such as the momentum approach? And then you want to start thinking about, does this learning community that I'm designing, does it work for every population on our campus? And sometimes it doesn't. The great thing about the African American Male Initiative program is it does already kind of have a framework for our Black male students here at our various institutions. And currently right now, I believe we have 22 AAMI programs across the USG. So all but I believe 4 institutions have an AAMI program. So before I go any further, I want to give some background on the USG's African American Male Initiative program. So University Systems African American Male Initiative Program is a system-wide initiative designed to increase the number of African American males who complete their post-secondary education from any of the USG institutions. The mission of it is to provide an integrated program model of academic and social tools that support students around adopting a positive mindset. So there's that word, mindset. And so you can already see how the AAMI program is already linked to the momentum approach to successfully complete their classes, elevate their cumulative GPAs, and matriculate through each academic level and graduate. And so the USG's AAMI program comes out of the Office of Strategic Academic Initiatives, which is led by Dr. Felita Williams and the AAMI Director, Wanda Gross. The office has a general oversight of all of our campus programs, and they provide a lot of the structure. So they guide what we kind of do. We have our own take and spin of how we implement it on our different campuses, but they have 4 key components that we have to include. And so there's our org structure. You can see that each campus program director kind of has a line up straight to the USG's AMI program. And the program typically has advisors, tutors, and mentors. So we have that support structure built into the program for our students in the program. And here we see kind of like the goals that the USG's AAMI's office has for sustaining the program and also connecting the program to the faculty and stuff that we have. And then also kind of giving some guidance into what should be happening in these different units. And one of the things that I want to point out is that the goal is to kind of have an academic focus. So as I had here on the previous slide, you can see here that the Office of Academic Affairs and Multicultural Affairs, Student Affairs typically houses a lot of these programs. But the goal is they really want to have an academic focus on these programs as well too, while collaborating with a lot of the different units. And so the 4 key components that we have for the AMI program is the academic skills enrichment, which is listed down here at the very bottom, student support services, adult and peer mentoring, and leadership development. And so now I'm going to talk specifically about the campus program that we have here at Augusta University. And so our program is grounded in evidence-based research. We've designed our program a little bit around Dr. Sean Harper's work on anti-deficit framework, and then Dr. Terrell Strayhorn's sense of belonging approach. And so by using these things, we emphasize excellence for both our students and our staff who are working with the program. We're not talking from a deficit framework. We believe that all of our students are capable, they are leaders, and we challenge this in them. And we've linked this to the momentum approach and a lot of the high impact practices. And I'm going to walk you guys through that in just a second. But before I do that, I do want to highlight some of our program successes, because you always want a moment to brag on what you've done. And so I'm going to take this moment to do that. So recently, we've had a few graduates in December who've been admitted into medical and graduate school. And so I think that's a really big accomplishment, especially when we're talking about Black male success. And so those are areas where we're not seeing a lot of Black males go in terms of getting graduate degrees or medical school. And so I'm really happy about that. The program participants, their GPAs have been higher than non-program participants, and close to 20% of the Black male population at Augusta University are enrolled in the AAMI program. And so I have here pictured 2 of our recent graduates. And so first up here, I have Daniel. He was in our undergraduate program, and then he came back and got a graduate degree. So he just finished with his master's in kinesiology, and he worked for us as a graduate assistant. So he helped a lot with our program. And then in the picture below, there's me, since you guys can't see me on camera today, with one of my student workers who served as a peer coach and a mentor. And he's recently been accepted into medical school. And so I really wanted to highlight Reggie and Daniel there as well. So our program benefits, we offer academic success workshops and stuff for our students, because the AMI program is housed in the Academic Success Center at Augusta University. And so in the Academic Success Center, we have first and second year experience, peer coaching, tutoring. And so all of those things are kind of ingrained within our program. We have also decided to link this in with our leadership certificate that we have at the university. And I'm going to talk about that on another slide. And that's how we've kind of intentionally linked in those high impact practices for our students. Our students also get the benefit of LSAT, GRE, MCAT, TEAS exam resources in our program. We have a laptop and calculator loaner program for our students. And so all of those things come from the USG's AAMI office, and we provide that free of charge to our students. And so this is the leadership certificate program that I was referring to. And so all of our students have the opportunity at Augusta University to earn the leadership certificate. But when I was looking through the data, I noticed that there weren't a lot of Black male students pursuing this degree, this certificate. And to me, it was almost a no-brainer. I met with the folks in the Academic Success Center on our team, and we talked about this. And so when it was time to do the competitive funding cycle for AAMI, we said, hey, let's go ahead and try to link in the leadership certificate, because honestly, our students aren't having to take additional courses really. The only additional course they take is Leadership 2000. And then everything else is basically experiential learning type things, and they're doing reflection things. And so we were like, okay, let's just go ahead, add this to the program. This intentionally gives students a pathway to get involved with undergraduate research, doing internships and stuff. And not only are they going to finish with a bachelor degree, they're also going to leave with a certificate of leadership. And that's going to help them when they're applying to graduate school. And so this is an overview of the integrated program that we have. And so those 4 key components with the academic skills enrichment, student support services, adult and peer mentoring, and leadership development. And I've tried to kind of list out some of the activities that we do that kind of fall into there, along with some of the courses and stuff that we have for our students to take, such as the Inquiry 1000 course, which is part of our core curriculum. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit. I teach that course for the students who are in our AAMI program. And within all of these things, we have ongoing assessment, and we monitor the student success matrix and the student needs. And we do that through a lot of the one-on-one appointments that we have with the students. And so we have some interviews and stuff that our peer coaches and graduate assistants do with some of the students. They have kind of like a rubric to go over and an interview guide that they use with the students to get information. We have banner data. All of the students in the AAMI program are coded in Banner, so we can always request information from our institutional research office for these students. We can reach out to our partners in student affairs and get that presence data as well to figure out if they are being, involved in some of the activities that we are asking them to get, involved with. And so here's kind of our 4-year framework for the AAMI program. Prior to any of our students even, starting their classes at Augusta University, we host a series of workshops over the summer. So they've attended orientation, and then in July, we start talking to them about the program, and we start that community building right then and there. We talk to them about study skills and what it takes to kind of make those A's and B's and stuff to their very first semester. We also kind of introduce them to some of the people who are already in the program so they can build the relationships with students who are currently there. And this also helps our students who are not enrolled during the summer kind of be engaged with the university. So that whole summer melt stop out type thing, we're engaging them in this process as well. So they're able to talk and mentor students who are coming to the university. And then during year 1, they enroll in our Inquiry 1000 course, and then the Leadership 2000 course. They meet with the career advisors, peer coach, academic advisors regularly. Year 2, we have the goal for them to maintain a 3.0 GPA, meeting with the peer mentor. And we start to add faculty mentors and stuff to their student success or networking team. And then year 3, we're adding community partners and stuff as well, because this is important in terms of like having that capital and social capital of having people outside of the university who can connect them to jobs and potentially internships as well. And in year 4, the students serve on our advisory committee for AAMI. And that way they can be a part of the decision-making that we're having for the AAMI program. So this is how we're including students in that process. So some of our students don't necessarily want to get the leadership certificate, and that's fine. And so what we do is we also have this passport program for our AAMI scholars. And basically it's a way that they can work with their peer mentors or their faculty mentors as having a guide to get them engaged in campus. And so there are 4 quadrants that we have for this. And that is the self-assessment and readiness. And so they'll do some career assessment, do some like self-efficacy scale type things, get some valuable feedback, do career exploration. So they'll have to meet with the career advisor still, also attend some events, and they kind of track it. And I think some people have talked about e-portfolios. We're still a little bit archaic with the way we're doing this right now. And so we are going to be trying to look at ways of implementing this into our learning management system so that way students aren't having to carry around pieces of paper and track when they're attending things and reflecting on those events that they attend. So here's an overview of the course that they're taking for Inquiry 1000 during their freshman year. And so this comes out of our first and second year experience office. It's a course, like I said, all of our students have to take, but we have a special section just for our AAMI program. And the section that they're taking is called Designing Your Life, and it implements a lot of the momentum things that we're talking about, the momentum approach tactics. And so mindset, purpose, program pathways, goal settings, there's different activities and projects and assignments that they're doing in this class. And so the students will, for instance, for the program pathways, I think there's an assignment where we have the students communicate with their academic advisors about their program. They get the program maps. They kind of sketch out what their 4 years is going to look like. They talk about the process of looking through the catalog and knowing the prerequisites. So we're teaching our students really to take ownership of their pathway and to understand their pathway as well. And so mentoring, this is a picture I really like to use, because picture here, we have some of our current medical students from Student National Medical Association meeting with some of our undergraduate students. And that's the unique experience that we have here at Augusta University, that we have a medical school and we have students who want to mentor undergraduate students. And so we get to make that connection there. This is kind of an overview of our 4-year roadmap that we have for mentoring as well. So our first and second year students are being mentored by our AAMI staff, which includes the peer coaches and peer mentors, and then also some of the folks from the Student National Medical Association. And one thing to note is that the students don't lose their mentors as they matriculate through the program. They just gain a new person each time. So it builds their network. And then we have different focus areas that we kind of emphasize what's going on for the different areas for each of our students. And I'll have to note here, we have it for the sophomore AAMI students with a 2.8 or higher can move on kind of to the next stage with the mentoring process, because we have a lot of competitive programs where our students are applying to during their sophomore year, such as nursing, respiratory therapy. And so we want them to be able to connect with folks in that field or in their area a little bit earlier for the mentoring process. So some of the other additional things that we do, we have Man Cave Monday, Follow Up Friday, and as I said, the mentoring program. We also have a book club that we do. Right now, we're currently about to read Black Man in the White Coat for our students who are interested in going into medical school. And they're reading these things with some of our faculty and some of our current medical students. And so they're having that discussion, and this works as kind of like a group mentoring as well too. So Man Cave Monday is a way that we kind of start with each week. This is a weekly process that we have, and we're doing all of these things on Microsoft Teams right now. So the sessions are recorded, so that way if students do miss it, they can go back and view it in our cloud service box account. And so we invite different speakers on campus or in the community to provide different perspectives and inspiration for our students. And so we'll have folks from Study Abroad come in, talk about the different opportunities. At the College of Education has collaborated with us of bringing a speaker in to talk about the need for getting more Black male teachers and stuff into the different systems. We've had campus police come in and talk to our students, and we've done that intentionally to kind of break down some of those barriers and stuff that are there, especially as it pertains to Black males and police officers. So we intentionally try to address that. And so we've been really grateful to have so many different partners on campus who have been willing to present to our students. And so Follow-Up Friday is another one of these traditional type things that students can expect every Friday from the AAMI program. And we've been working on holistic wellness for this. And so we've partnered with our student council and psychological services as well as student wellness to kind of facilitate the Follow-Up Fridays. And so we focus on the different dimensions of wellness. And this has also helped the students kind of build that trust with our counseling staff. And so whenever they do have issues, they are more likely to schedule appointments, because we know it's very hard for people to make that first step to make counseling appointments, even though we may recommend it to them over and over. They're like, I don't know them. I'm not about to meet with them. I'll just talk to you about my problems. And I'm like, I'm not a counselor. And so this has been a really good opportunity for us to do that. We also try to connect a lot of the things that we talk about and do with different community and social issues. And so here are a few news articles and stuff that I have, and we intentionally talk about these things during some of our sessions with the guys in the program. And so this oftentimes adds value and purpose sometimes to what the students are doing. Like, they know why they are pursuing a degree in medicine when we discuss some of these articles. So like the AAMC, the Association of American Medical Colleges, have released a whole call out to recruit more Black men to be doctors, because there are less Black men in medical school today than it was in 1974. I was shocked when I found that out. I was like, really? It's less now than it was in 1974, especially considering what the 70s were like in the United States. I was really shocked to learn that. And then learning about different things about how current medical students are basically believing certain stereotypes about Black patients in terms of, skin being thicker or blood, being a little bit different. I'm like, these are really medical students who are believing these same archaic stereotypes today in this century. And so this inspires some of our students to, go and pursue and get those degrees and apply to those programs. And so we do that whole thing. And so we connect it with purpose and value, which is big. And we got a lot of these things from the Motivate Lab when they did the presentations for the USG. And so we tried to incorporate a lot of the things that we've been getting from the Momentum Summits and things. And so that concludes everything that I have for the presentation. I'm gonna pop into the chat and see if there's anything that anyone wants to ask.
Thank you so much, Jerry. That was fantastic. And I did post that EAB document in the chat. You're welcome to do it again, but it's there for y'all, the pathway thing. I'm going to quickly hand it over to Michael Sanservino and Eric Cuevas to go ahead and take us to the next stage. We're talking about looking at learning community. So Michael and Eric, it's all yours.
Well, great. Thank you so much. And I think Eric's going to go ahead and share his screen. So he'll be the driver of the PowerPoint here. But thank you so much for the opportunity to talk with you all today, a little bit about all the great stuff we're doing as we build community here at Georgia State University. To kind of start off, we included a slide that just has a little bit of info about the university, because even though we're all in the same system, sometimes, we forget about all the details on, what exactly are the populations that we're serving in our locations. So, Georgia State, we're in Metro Atlanta, we're across 6 different campuses with about 54,000 plus students. But, one of the things that was really important, especially as we pivoted into COVID, is that we really wanted to look at what were the unique needs of our students, not just across the whole university, being a minority serving institution, but also looking at specific populations within the university and how best we can serve their unique needs. So with that, we're going to first start with kind of some of the academic initiatives and support initiatives, and then I'll talk about some of the student engagement, student success support initiatives after that. But so I'll hand it off to Eric to get us started.
Thank you, Dr. Sanservino, and good afternoon, everybody. I hope you could see my screen okay and you could hear me. If not, pop it into the chat and Michael will alert me. I want to acknowledge the difficult work that we do, even under the best of times. It's rewarding work, but we're trying to change the communities in which we live through the youth, through education. And now we had to do all of that in the time of COVID. So essentially what I often like to share and I try to inspire my staff with is, we've built a Titanic, We are the largest institution in the system, one of the largest in the country. We have well over 50,000 students, but now we have to find a way to make the Titanic fly. And how can we engage as many students as possible? And while we were going to have, for the first time in history of this business, millions of students from all over the world start the first time in college, at least partially at a distance. And we did that in a plethora of ways. And I'm going to be walking you through some of those things that we could reflect and discuss. You know, at Georgia State, everything we do is scaled and it is informed by data. And I'm going to walk you through many of the interventions and the tweaks we put in place to operate and maintain community, even at a distance. But I wanted to start, as we often do, with the data. Every single day of the fall semester, and still currently, some collection of all the staff, all the leadership staff, meet to discuss and wrestle with the issues that students face learning, whether it's under the best of times or under COVID times. What you're seeing is just some of the data that myself and Dr. Sansevero and others looked at every day during the fall to tweak and refine the things that we do. On the left side of the screen, I know it's a little small, I did that somewhat on purpose. What you're looking at is this is a data on communication that we put forth with all of our students around the withdrawal and around their check-in with learning and tutoring and things along those lines. So we can see, based on your campus, on your level, are you engaging? And we took that a step further. On the right hand on the screen, again, purposefully cut a little bit, we were looking at all the populations of the university on a day-to-day basis on their engagement in our learning management system. So if you want to look on the right-hand side on the top, it says engagement rate for students of all types. We could see at any given point which percentage of our students, which population rather of our students were not engaging in their learning management system. You know, sometimes these numbers, when were in excess of 95%, that's good. Sometimes they're a little lower, like 71%. So we would have to pivot and engage the students where they are with the resources that are now flying in the air as we're delivering quality education at a distance. So let's walk through some of those things that we put in place. Let's start with academic support. We obviously transition all of these programs to an online environment. And additionally, we try to serve students in different ways. We had our tutoring, our academic coaching, our SI, and things along those lines transition to a fully digital environment. We hit them synchronously and asynchronously. And these difficult times gave us an opportunity to pilot and do some new things. One of the things that we did, if you look on the lower right-hand corner of your screen, we at Georgia State and many of the schools represented on this call have been doing supplemental instruction or learning and tutoring or some type of academic support for years, but we did something new. We built a library of what we called This Week in Supplemental Instruction. All the courses that we cover, not only did we continue to host live at a distance and sometimes even in-person SI sessions, tutoring sessions, we also did recap and preview videos because we know students had busy lives. Some of these students took advantage of the situation, picked up additional hours of employment if they were able to do so. So we have an ever-growing library of 600 videos based on topics that were happening that week in the lecture. So if you look, this was taken back in October. So if you look in the middle of your screen, we could see what Professor Warzabite, that was my best attempt to pronounce that name, in that particular week. If the student was not available to come to our SI or our tutoring session, that was there. Whatever was covered in that week, we went over, we recorded, we banked it, and we saved it, and it's there forever. We remove it for the next semester, and we use that library to train the incoming SI leaders. We think some form of programming and learning at a distance is going to just be part of the normal business of higher education. We really hope and pray, and we want students to be with us this fall 2021 as much as possible, but we're ready if we're going to exist in this reality for a little while longer. You know, we were able to decipher how students were developing, or rather ingesting this information. I remember, years ago when mobile devices were up on the rise, we would joke that, you have education in the palm of your hand. We actually had some data to support that. 20% of all of our students viewed some level of academic support on their mobile device. That is some interesting information for us as we continue to build these things. We had over 10,000 synchronous online and in-person tutoring sessions for the fall. And we funneled students from wherever they landed at the university to the resource that they need. The top screenshot you see is iCollege. If any student at the university logs into iCollege to go ahead and work through their courses, there are easy links that will zoom you directly to a real person who is standing by for you live to give you some academic support. Additionally, freshman learning is something that is paramount for all of us. And this was extremely paramount in the time of COVID. What you see here is a live screenshot of one of my classes. We did not require, of course, students to have their cameras on, but we taught the freshman seminar course, which anchors our freshman learning communities, live and synchronous. So this is my class, and they were encouraged to have their cameras on, and we had real dialogues to make this as real as we possibly can. With our academic advisement offices, we had over 100,000 individual sessions since the pandemic, and all of our freshmen received academic advisement because, as always, we routed all of the academic support and all of the experiential learning of college through the freshman seminar course, which is the anchor of learning communities. And despite being, in these times, the two-year colleges will sympathize with this. Nationally, two-year college enrollments are precipitously down. Luckily, at Perimeter College of Georgia State University, we were less down than the national average. But even with those complications, we were still able to have a near record number of learning communities. Our staff build these schedules for the students. We stole this from McDonald's. I remember when you could go to McDonald's and say, give me a cherry pie and a Big Mac and a soda, but now you just say, give me a number one. We did that same exact thing with the freshman learning community schedules. If you're a business major, we'd have business one. And that was, in normal times, it would be we'd have a morning schedule and a PM schedule. In online, that's less relevant, but we still had a near record number of opportunity at both the associate degree level and the baccalaureate degree level to have these learning communities built where they could build relationships with each other, even online. On this particular slide, Bryce Garland, who is row 1, 2, 3, column 2. Bryce was taking this class from Tennessee. Bryce was in the military, and he was still logging on every session for his class, and he was kind of lonely, and he made really good friends with Quan, who was right above next to me, who was one of our Coca-Cola scholars. Two unlikely friends that have nothing in common, but now they're regularly talking with one another, even in kind of the digital space. Let me advance to the next slide if I can. This is an example specifically on the GSU 1010 or PCO 1020 course. That is a course, again, the freshman seminar course, which anchors learning communities. We did something very interesting here. So we knew we were going to be teaching at a distance. So we did the best of both worlds. What we did is all summer, we worked with a huge team of people, and we line by line, slide by slide, word by word, constructed the new course. So for the first time ever, every single freshman at Georgia State University heard the exact same material in the exact same way. We hired voice actors to kind of say the words that we put together line by line in very short 20 to 30 minute bursts. And then that week they would have live synchronous class meetings with their instructor to, in a fun and engaging way, go over the material they just watched. What you see on the bottom of this screen is another one of our classes. This is, we wove in some of our college to career work. And this was a session talking about what is some of the worst thing that you should not ask your boss in your first month of employment. And one of our instructors played Family Feud. I know this is small, it's small on purpose, but I'll read it to you. On the left-hand side, one of our students said, "This class is mad funny, really the highlight of my Mondays." And then after that, Zion said, "I just want to say I'm very proud of my team." These are the type of things that, of course, would happen naturally in a classroom face-to-face, but we had to work very hard and diligently to make happen in the digital space. I was actually invited as a guest judge, if you'll see on the screenshot on the right in the upper left-hand corner. So we were hitting students where they are in different ways and trying to engage them as much as we possibly can. And reaching out to students, that also didn't stop. We hosted so we're still reaching out to our community. Many of you are familiar with the Latin American Association. Every year they have their Youth Leadership Conference. Well, this year was the 21st conference, and COVID or not, it still happened. And we engaged 10,000 people in the community with our Latino Student Services and Outreach Division, reaching out to these students and having our current students serve as mentees to the youth and providing workshops on a plethora of topics related to getting ready for college. I want to commend the great work that Jerry is doing at Augusta University. We also have an AAMI program, which in these difficult times has grown exponentially. We have over 200 men in our program, where just a couple of years ago, we had about 15 or 16 students, and we're still pushing out relevant programming. Michael on our team, Michael Kimball below. I'm getting some feedback, so if you're not speaking, mute, that would be helpful. Thanks. Michael Kimball below is pushing out high quality content for our students. And this is just a small example. We had the National Day of Service, where we had over 200 students online and in person still participate in the things that we had sprinkled all over the city. It is a day on, not a day off for us here at Georgia State. And I am going to turn it over to Dr. Sansevero to talk about some of the other things that we're doing to engage our students.
Right, so we wanted to make sure also, as we capture, all of the wonderful things we're doing in the curricular space and trying to engage students in their academic life, we also wanted to make sure that we were equally engaging in the co-curricular space and looking also at holistic support. And of course, like many of you, we had very little time to do the initial pivot. And when we had to close campuses and shut down facilities, we still had a lot of students that had food insecurities, housing insecurities, and we still needed to find a way to serve these students. And so part of what we did as we looked at our holistic support, we went right back to Maslow's hierarchy of needs. What are these most essential services we need in place tomorrow? And so looking at collaborative partnerships across the university, utilizing existing technologies, we went ahead and created from the ground up a financial hardship and emergency assistance program that was based on a single online entry designed in Maxient, which is our conduct database, but we used it in a new and innovative way to be able to find a way to get students connected to the resources they needed. And again, shifted the burden of the student running around to find resources to putting that burden on ourselves. The students complete one single online application that gives us a lot of information that then behind the scenes, our Dean of Students team, our Student Financial Services team, counseling, we look at what the student has indicated that their needs are, and we behind the scenes figure out the right fit. We worked with our foundation for crowdfunding to get private funds available. And in the early days of March, none of us really knew that CARES Act was coming, so we had to find our own local solutions. We also launched the Be Well initiative, 24-hour a day, 7-day a week, 365-day a year mental health support that's available to our students. We have through Together All our peer level support for peer-to-peer engagement, as well as our professional counselors who are available. Of course, Eric's already talked a lot about the academic support and advising. We use the Navigate app to make sure that we were able to make those 100,000 appointments and connect with all those advisors. And then I also really want to talk about our Panther Connect program. Similar to the challenge, of course, when we talk about students being overwhelmed by choice. And so the reason why you develop meta majors is to help give some guided pathways to students. Well, when you've got 600 plus student organizations, when you have more co-curricular options with thousands and thousands of programs that students have a challenge, wrapping their minds around. You create these great portals, as we do. We've got campus labs like a lot of schools do. And we have a Panther involvement network, but we wanted to be more intentional, and we wanted to be more direct in how we engage and how we invite our students into our communities. We didn't want to just say, here's the portal link, go to it. And so through our Panther Connect program, we were able to pull data from their applications. And so we specifically looked at the students' high school involvements for our traditional age students. And then we mapped their high school level involvements based on their admission data against our 600 plus organizations to create, in essence, a co-curricular meta-major approach. We also did the same with mapping all of our academic co-curricular activities. And so we were able to create these portals through which we could automatically connect the student. So the student didn't have to go looking for these opportunities. We automatically enrolled them in these opportunities at new student orientation, so that upon the completion of their orientation, they were already part of this co-curricular virtual group. And then they could look at, instead of 600 organizations, they had a more customized experience that said, based on what we know about your academic interests, your career interests, and your previous high school engagement, we can narrow down and say, these are the 20-something organizations that are more tailor-customed to what your experience might be. And so that's how the Panther Connect pilot launched, and it was very successful. And we've been very excited to add other layers to it with a Pounce Rewards program so that students can earn points. We also looked at, and we've been tracking, student engagement in the co-curricular space, particularly looking at, are our students taking online classes still engaging with our activities? Because the presumption was, if you're not on campus, the students aren't going to engage. But the reality is what we did find is that we had significant engagement. Tens of thousands of students. We were finding that a lot of our virtual programming, when we were tracking the involvement, what used to be a popular on-site healthy cooking class was all of a sudden something that went from having 30 participants in a on-campus space to now having tens of thousands of downloads across all of our wellness programming in the virtual space. So these connections and communities have really been enhanced from what they were. And of course, we're also very proud. Georgia State was just recognized by NASPA for the Virtual Innovation Award, one of 10 institutions in the country to receive this award. And all of that was based on our holistic support model and how we were able to pivot to serve our students and create community during the pandemic. And so with that, we thank you so much for giving us this opportunity. And if you've got any questions, whether now or after, please get in touch with us. We're happy to connect with you. Thank you.
All right, well, thank you so much, both of y'all, for that. I want to quickly move on to our folks from Georgia Gwinnett, make sure we keep time, but I think we've got plenty of time. So I'm going to hand this over to Karen Jackson and Justin Jernigan and Rachel Bowser, if I can find them all on the screen. I'm going to replace the spotlight. There we go. And it's up to y'all. I don't know who's leading, Rachel, but my instinct is to always start with you.
That's a terrible instinct. We're gonna, it's a terrible instinct. I'm gonna dissuade you of it right here. Okay. I think we're gonna have Justin start today.
Okay, well, you all are all there, so please take it away.
All right, I'm happy to kick it off. So we're gonna just begin by thanking our colleagues from Fort Valley and Augusta and Georgia State. Thank you for those strategies and great ideas. We're gonna, in some sense, continue that line of how do we build community among our students. So I'm going to focus in particular right now on our learning communities at GGC. So at Georgia Gwinnett, we have a learning community approach to engaging our students, and I'm going to do my best to make sure you can all see the slides. Is that good for everyone? Let me know if not. All right. Okay. So we're gonna first of all just point out that this is a collaborative effort. When we talk about learning communities at Georgia Gwinnett, you can see from our presentation, we've got academic and student affairs, we've got student engagement and success, our division, but we've also got partners across campus, obviously in all the academic schools, our registrar's office in enrollment management, financial aid, so student affairs certainly involved in housing as well. So it's a team effort, just like anything that's successful in serving our students. So we're going to take a quick look here, and it does seem that my slides are not advancing. So maybe Jonathan can help me out. Okay, there we go.
There you go.
It did go. Okay. So a couple of quotes here. I'm not gonna read those out to you, but they're in the material, so you can go back and review those later. But essentially, we're talking about the philosophy behind why it's important to engage our students in community, in this concept of going beyond just what they're doing and engaging in the classroom to engaging in big questions together with faculty, with staff, with other students. How do they do that in a way that's not only productive in that individual set of courses that they're engaged in, but how do they do that in a way that's going to be meaningful in their life and that's going to help them to build a productive academic mindset and the sense of belonging that we know is important for student success. So beyond those few quotes, we also want to look at how do we logistically get students into an environment where they're learning in community. So at GGC, the way we're defining learning communities, you can see here in the slide, the classes are linked, but they're not locked. So we will help students to enroll in a set of courses that are linked together. Students can change a course or two in that set of courses, but we highly encourage them to stay in the classes together for all the reasons that we're going to discuss, the benefits that that brings in terms of learning in community. A few other quotes here from some of our colleagues who've done quite a bit of work in learning communities. These will be familiar names to everyone, but they really do help students to engage with the big questions in life. And it's important to keep in mind, I can hear George Koo's voice in my mind right now, and it's when done well, right? When any of these high impact practices like learning communities, when done well, have a disproportionate benefit for students who traditionally have been underserved and underrepresented in higher education. So this is what we're after at GGC: creativity, thinking outside the box, and how do we engage our students in ways that are going to be meaningful for them. I'm going to point out just a few sort of umbrella terms that we can hold on to during our talk. So in practice, some of the umbrellas that we like to refer to at GGC have to do with students who need to be engaged in terms of where they start with us. So we're taking students from wherever they start and helping them to progress toward completion and career beyond that. So we start with a program called LIFT that's launching and inspiring your first year transition. And then we have something called Grizzly First, which is a first generation focus learning community at Georgia Gwinnett. We don't stop at the first year because, as I think has become really apparent to all of us during Momentum Summit, if you stop with the first year, nobody completes in their first year, right? So nobody graduates in year one, I think was shared at the opener for the summit. So we do engage students in a program called RISE, which is reimagining the sophomore experience. And we have thematic programs like this all through the students' growth through Georgia Gwinnett College experience. So learning communities are course-based, but not only course-based. They can also be thematic or interest-based. And we're going to look at a couple of examples of that. I'm going to highlight one in particular here we call ACER. ACER is a learning community focused on our Hispanic and Latinx students at GGC, who are about 24.8, almost 25% of our population at GGC. And ACER is the Hispanic achievers committed to excellence in results. It also happens to mean, to create, to make, to achieve in Spanish. So ACER is one of our examples. So those are a couple of key terms, but I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Bowser, to Rachel, to look at the goals of learning communities and how those relate to our cross-campus efforts.
Thank you, Justin. So I just first want to emphasize a thing that Justin began with and that we heard in everyone's presentation so far, which is that this is really a collaborative effort at GGC. We work closely, our partners in student engagement and success, in academic and student affairs, and enrollment management. And we could not really conceive of communities of any kind, let alone learning communities for our students, if we weren't engaged in that kind of collaborative work. So these learning outcomes that we try to track across the learning communities are a product of collaborative work between academic and student affairs and student engagement and success. And we do work as best as we can to nest this initiative within as many other initiatives that are going on campus, so we can try to track multiple things at once. So The first outcome that we try to pay attention to is whether students enrolled in learning communities will demonstrate growth in productive academic mindset. We worked pretty carefully with our partners in the system office, with Jonathan and with Lori Haygood, to build some data sharing and data analysis scaffolding that would allow us to take the mindset survey results. And our approach to doing the mindset survey at GGC for the last couple of years has been to send it to everybody, but really target delivery in our English 1101 classes, have our instructors highlighted several times when our students are in person, set aside time for taking the pre and the post in class. And then we work to build some scaffolding such that we could disaggregate the results of students who are in English 1101s who were in learning communities and students who are in English 1101s who were not in learning communities. So we could use that data to look at mindset changes. We also have tried to pay attention to the extent to which students in learning communities can explain in specific ways the ways in which their academic interests and career goals either align or do not align with their academic focus area. We have tried to track that through pretty simple pre and post surveys that we're distributing in those classes, which have the effect of reminding us about paying attention to the kind of co-curricular support aligned with focus areas that we're associating with those learning communities, in addition to just the classes that we're placing in them. And that's been a real focus for us over the last year as we try to figure out how we can transition our co-curricular programming that supports focus areas from a primarily in-person learning environment to a primarily digital learning environment, hybrid as well. And then finally, we try to pay attention to the extent to which our students in learning communities are demonstrating growth in integrative learning experiences, engaging in new and diverse situations, expressing themselves flexibly, connecting knowledge and experience creatively, and deepening self-understanding. And as a way to track that, we are trying to leverage our e-portfolio platform, VIA, and we have a set of faculty that we have worked with in order to combine the assessment principles the assessment properties that VIA allows us to do with the e-portfolio platform that VIA provides to the students, so that the faculty are working together to create assignments that produce artifacts that then, once in VIA, can be assessed to look at those integrative learning progressions.
Thank you, Rachel. Yes, so we talked about the focus areas in the previous slide and a little earlier. This is just an image that helps us, I think, to both explain to students and also to ourselves, how do we picture learning communities functioning at Georgia Gwinnett. So you see the 6 academic focus areas. These are fairly common at many of our institutions. But underneath there, you see what may look like a Trivial Pursuit pie piece. And those essentially are triads or 3 linked courses that we schedule students into, typically at orientation, although efforts are underway to get students into those learning communities as early as we can. But we call those a 9-credit first-year learning community triad. So those are essentially 3 linked courses under an umbrella of a focus area. And the umbrella is important because there will be the programming that Rachel talked about outside of the classroom that supports the students' growth inside these learning communities takes place under the umbrella, but not always within the pie pieces of the triad or the linked courses. It's also important that we have 3 linked classes in each triad. And part of that is, so we are providing students with a 9-hour block essentially of courses, and in Banner it's called a block. But essentially those 9 hours only provide part of the student schedule. For a full-time student, they're going to need to add something to their schedule. We also know that it's important for students to maintain as full a schedule as they can under their circumstances. And so we target 15 credit hours for our first-year students. Unless there's a reason that they cannot do that, we will focus on helping students to select 2 additional courses in most cases for a 15-hour schedule as a first-year student. So the 9 credit hour triad and the 6 additional credit hours for a total of 15 will make up the student's first-year schedule. Important to note that the first-year seminar was brought up in a couple of our colleagues' presentations, and that's also true for us. It's also sort of a heart or a pivot course for many of these learning communities. So we're going to see how these are constructed a little more here in coming slides. So first of all, the scaling learning communities. This is an effort that is not just like Georgia Gwinnett College. It hasn't been around forever. And so learning communities for us really got off the ground in 2017. conceptually a little before that, but in fall 2017, we piloted a few learning communities, and you can see from this slide how they have grown over the last few years. So just looking at fall to fall growth, you can see that we've now expanded so that we're addressing that target of about 70% of our incoming class in a learning community experience. So we're approaching that in the number of students. And so what we're after now is increasing and maintaining that scale while including a little more in the way of assessment that Rachel also mentioned earlier. Also in terms of maintaining the integrity of those learning communities so that we encourage students as far as possible to try to remain in most of those courses, if not all three of the linked triad courses. And partly that is because we know that there are benefits that accrue when they stay in all 9 hours. For example, the faculty communication that can occur across those three courses can be much more powerful for a student who's in all three. Many of our students will remain in 2 of the 3. We know that there are some students that will just keep one of those classes, but we have been pretty pleased by the percentage of students that have remained in all 3 of their learning community triad courses. So you can also see here that 15 of our learning communities in this case included a first-year seminar directly. There were other students who added a first-year seminar onto their schedule. So our goal is obviously also to increase the number of these learning communities that include a first-year seminar. At GGC, that is a 1-credit course. So you can see the numbers there, though, in terms of the scale that we're looking to maintain. All right, one more just to give you a little bit of the flavor or the broad sense of the LCs. You can see here the percentage of students. Actually, this is of the students who remained in 100% of their learning community sections in fall 19. This was the breakdown in terms of the demographic representation, the different groups that were represented. So equity of access is really what we're focusing on here. And the assessment comes in where we're going to look at equity of success in these courses. What do they mean for students across these different populations? What do learning communities mean practically for our second language students? What do they mean practically for our African American or Black students? What do they mean for our Asian students? What do they mean for our Hispanic or Latinx students? So we're looking to engage students where they are, again, bringing them to success in meeting their own academic goals, in reaching college completion, and then being prepared for their career that they're interested in pursuing after college or graduate school after college. So all of these groups, we're going to look at not only equity of access, which we see reflected here, but taking that next step into equity of success. And so along those lines, I'm going to turn it back over to Rachel again to look at how these learning community principles interact with momentum.
Thank you, Justin. So, for the most part, this table kind of tracks through some of the outcomes that I mentioned earlier and makes pretty intuitive connections to momentum approach principles, right? We link these LC blocks or triads to focus areas in an effort to deepen students' purposeful choice, give them a sort of section of courses that are linked to that focus area declaration. We emphasize academic mindset measurement, academic mindset pedagogical approaches, and then in many cases courses like first year seminar, which are so oriented towards academic mindset. We try to incorporate the integrative learning activities in as many courses, LCs, as we can, as a way to sort of think about momentum that brings all the different curricular focuses together. We try to heighten engagement and academic focus by integrating high impact practices like e-portfolios, et cetera, within this other high impact practice of learning communities. This last one I want to sort of highlight as the thing that in some ways could be the kind of additional umbrella over the rest of them, which is that we really lean on communication among the faculty and staff that are associated with the learning communities in order to help students both identify and move through these critical milestones. And there are some, very concrete tools, program maps, mentoring milestones, et cetera, that we ask our faculty and staff to lean on in order to help students move in this way. But I will also say that this element of the learning community is the one that is most dependent on good collaborative internal institutional processes, right? That we can manage, like how our units collaborate together and how we communicate with our faculty and staff who are supporting these sections. But I will also say that it is dependent on oftentimes factors that are outside of institutional control. learning communities and the ability to build them and keep them stable and have as many students in as many sections as possible in the way that Justin was referencing in the last slide, that's dependent on the way enrollment numbers trend and the timeline on which they trend and how stable we can keep our schedule building in response to that. In this last year, we have had to spend a lot of time thinking about the stability of that schedule building in the context of a pandemic environment and shifting public health guidelines and shifting guidelines from our system office partners about how to offer classes in what modality, what percentage when, et cetera. So these are sort of areas where the larger environment and the pressures that exist from different stakeholders about how you put together curriculum for students that is accessible, that is safe, that is oriented towards institutional goals, right? The effects of those are long, and they impact the way we can manage as proactively and as consistently as possible our communication with our partners in these efforts.
Excellent. Thank you, Rachel. These are a few lessons learned. I'm not going to dwell on these because I want to give some time right away to Dr. Jackson, because a lot of these things are going to be covered in how we support students. And that is all about what Karen is going to share with us next.
So I'm just want to very briefly share a few things that we do to support building community at GGC. We want to start as soon as the students set foot on campus during orientation. So one of the things that we do with our orientation is that we pod the students based on their focus area. So they move through the day engaging with students who are who have the same career and academic interests. And then we also have an academic session for those particular focus areas where they get to engage with faculty who may be, some of their professors, or sometimes we have advisors in those academic sessions as well, where they can discuss things like careers and curricula, and just any questions will get answered that the students might have regarding a particular major or career path. And so in addition to kind of getting them in this community of common interest around their careers, they're also beginning to discern around their purposeful choice. And so one of the things that we do is we provide each group a wristband. And that wristband is the confirmation that they are in their right focus area. And they'll say Georgia Gwinnett College, and on the other side, it'll say go be great, because that's what we do here. And we try to also match the color of the band based on the focus area with the color of the hoods that the faculty wear during graduation, again, creating that sense of community. We also provide our students with a lexicon of terms, of college terms that they might not be familiar with, because we know college has its own cultural language. And so being able to understand that language also makes you have a better sense of belonging if you can understand what the conversation is all about. And so again, when students are registering for their classes, we also have faculty from their particular areas in the classes with them as they are registering, and you can hear the conversations between the faculty and the students. The students will say, what class do you teach? I want to be in your class. Or they're talking to one another, having conversations with people that they've just met that day. Well, let's try to get our classes together. So they're already beginning to build, their own network of support, their own friends during our orientation day. The other piece to that is we also have our learning communities. And so, Justin and Rachel talked a little bit about our learning communities, but I kind of want to highlight our first gen learning community. Just like our colleagues at Fort Valley State, within our learning communities, we have a campus discovery activity where students work in groups to go around to learn more about the campus services. They have to take selfies and share their selfies with their class. Again, getting them engaged in a fun activity while at the same time they're learning. We also invite our campus partners into the classroom, into those learning communities, because what we found is those classrooms become a safe space. For students whose learning communities are taught by our student success advisors, they also serve as their advisors. And so they begin to build a very comfortable relationship with those advisors, and the classroom becomes a safe place. And so bringing our campus partners into the safe place where they can ask questions and get to know them makes it a little less intimidating when they have to actually utilize some of those campus services. A lot of our assignments are also attached to the engagement with some of our campus partners as well. So we tried again to get the students used to interacting with our campus partners so that they're more likely to utilize those services when they need to. We also have a learning community that focus on our first generation students, our first generation college students, and they engage in all of those activities within our learning communities, but there is an additional component. They also engaged in a service learning component. And prior to COVID, they would, either go work with a junior achievement, work on some service learning projects here on campus. But we've also had instances where they have created their own service learning project. I mean, everything from identifying the community partners that they're working with, working out the logistics. They've done toiletry drives, but they've put and executed the entire project themselves. And then we invite those same students to our symposium, where they share with the rest of the campus community what that experience was all about. And almost every student will say that they didn't know that they could make an impact on the community that they did, whether they are working with young children or battered women. We've done a number of different projects, but that was one of the things that really stood out through our focus groups that we've conducted, as well as just anecdotally having conversations with the students. Is yes, they enjoyed being in the learning community, but the big takeaway was that service learning project, especially since they were first generation students, but really understanding that they can make a difference. And if you feel like you can make a difference, then that really does elevate your sense of belonging. And so through all of our learning communities, we've begun to have a learning community day where all of our learning communities can share projects that they've worked on. And, we really have seen how that has really helped us in creating a sense of community among our students.
Thank you so much, Karen. Yes, I'm glad you mentioned our learning community. Jonathan was actually kind enough to join us at our inaugural learning community day. So excited about that and what that's going to look like in years to come. So again, here are some of those next steps that I referred to earlier. You can see the sign at the bottom, right? That's a banner that appears all over campus, and it reminds our students that that's who they are. So thank you so much for sharing those details about how we engage our students, how we get them to that point. I'm going to stop at that point, but leave this up for you all, and then I'll stop sharing. And just thank you for your time. And I don't know if we have time for anything in the chat. I know we're at time.
Well, again, in the virtual world, we have as much time and as much space as we ever need. So, y'all, this has been great, and I appreciate it. There is ample opportunity to ask questions in the chat. If y'all want to connect with any of our speakers today, I know they're happy to work with y'all. I want to thank the entire panel, and I want to thank everybody who's hung out with us for the entirety of this show. This has been great. Again, I really appreciate all the commitment over time. I want you to go in energized and excited about your planning tomorrow. And we'll see you on Friday at the campus report out sessions, where we're going to see the spotlights. And I guess I'm just going to go ahead and steal a line from Georgia Gwinnett and say, go be great.